Hey there viewers, where are you tuning in from right now and what time is it on your end? Share your details in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories reach. Today's account takes us deep into the prison walls, where Diddy's life is more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. Let's dive in. Chapter 1, The Fall of a Mogul. I remember the exact moment Diddy Combs walked through those doors, not the Diddy from the TV screens, the larger-than-life mogul dripping in diamonds, flashing that power smirk like he had the world in his pocket, not the Diddy who once threw million dual parties on yachts, who made careers with a snap of his fingers, who had presidents as celebrities and billionaires on speed dial. Now this Diddy was different. This Diddy had his hands cuffed in front of him, his posture stiff, his eyes scanning the room like a man who still hadn't accepted where he was. He didn't belong here, and he knew it, but that didn't mean the prison was about to make any exceptions. The air in MDC Brooklyn was thick, stale, and humming with the quiet kind of energy that meant everybody knew who had just walked in. Some of the guys stood near the doors, arms crossed, their faces blank, but their eyes sharp, watching him. Others just smirked, nudged each other, whispered under their breath. You could hear it in the way the noise shifted, a mixture of curiosity, amusement, and something darker. Nobody says it out loud, but there's a code in here. It doesn't matter who you were on the outside. In here, you're nobody until you prove otherwise. I saw it in his face, the way his jaw tightened, the way his breathing changed just slightly when the cuffs came off. He had walked into this place like he still had some control left, but the second those cuffs were gone, it was just him. No bodyguards, no entourage, no power to snap his fingers and make things disappear. He stood there for a second too long, just staring at his hands. Maybe he was still waiting for someone to step in to say this was all a mistake. But there were no lawyers here to smooth things over, no press conferences, no PR team, just the harsh overhead lights, the stench of sweat and bleach, and the cold stare of a correctional officer waiting for him to move him. The word hung in the air like a slow knife. Did he blink? You heard me, the guard said this time, sharper. Strip everything. I won't lie. Part of me wondered if he'd fight it, if his pride would get the best of him. But no, he knew the drill, knew that in here there were no special privileges. One by one, the layers of his old life came off: the expensive designer suit, the silk shirt that probably cost more than an entire month's salary for one of these guards, everything down to his skin, until he stood there like the rest of us had before him, naked, vulnerable, human. PR in squat cough. That's when it really hit him, that moment of humiliation, that deep cutting realization that he had been reduced to this, that same body that had once been swarmed by flashing cameras, touched by women who whispered his name like a secret, was now being inspected under the dull, indifferent eyes of prison staff. He did what he was told. He had no choice. They handed him his new uniform, a baggy orange jumpsuit, stiff from industrial washing, smelling like a mixture of sweat and detergent that never quite masked the years of use. He took it like it was foreign, hesitating for just a second before slipping it on. The fabric swallowed him whole. No more designer fits, no more diamond watches, just the same standard issue uniform worn by the thousands of other men who had come before him. He wasn't Diddy anymore, just inmate number 0283684. Then came the walk. Processing had been private at the main block that was a stage, and every inmate in that damn place was the audience. It started as a slow murmur, just a hum of voices in the distance. Then it got louder, laughter, whistles. Oh, look who it is, welcome to the jungle, Puff Daddy. Hey Diddy, you hiring? Cause I ain't doing nothing right now. The guards kept him moving, but I saw the way his shoulders tensed, the way his eyes darted, never looking directly at anyone, but still watching. He was used to people looking at him, but never like this in the free world. He had been a king. His name alone meant something: money, influence, power. But in here, a name could get you respect, or it could get you killed the first night. No cameras, no interviews, no reporters asking how he's holding up, just to sell his new home. The mattress was nothing more than a thin pad, barely thicker than a folded towel, placed on a cold metal frame. The blanket was scratchy, more suited for a dog than a man. The air smelled of sweat, mildew, and something sour that never quite went away, no matter how many times they bleached the floors. He sat on the edge of the bed, his hands clasped together, elbows on his knees, thinking. Processing. Dinner had come and gone, a tray of lukewarm slop, a slice of something that resembled meatloaf but tasted like old cardboard, and a side of mystery mush that even the rats didn't seem interested in. He hadn't touched it. Maybe he thought he could hold out, wait for something better, but there was nothing better, not here. Outside his cell, the prison was alive with sound, the clatter of metal trays, the distant voices of men talking, laughing, arguing. Someone was singing off key, someone else was pacing their cell, the steady thud of their shoes against concrete filling the silence. Then a voice from the next cell over. Hey Diddy. Silence, a chuckle. Ain't too many of your kind in here. Has still nothing, man, you quiet as hell. What happened to all that? Take that energy. Laughter down the hall. But he didn't move, didn't answer. but I saw the way his fingers curled, the way his jaw tightened. He had spent his entire life controlling the conversation, setting the narrative, and now he was just waiting to see how long before they forgot about him, or worse, before they decided they never would. Chapter 2: MDC Brooklyn, a living nightmare. It didn't take long for the weight of reality to set in. By the second day, the illusion that this was all some temporary inconvenience had already started to crack. MDC Brooklyn wasn't like the private compounds and penthouses he was used to. It wasn't even like the high-end rehabilitation centers some of the industry's elite had checked into after their scandals, where therapy sessions were paired with scenic views and organic meals. This was a place designed to break men down. The walls themselves seemed to hum with tension, thick with the kind of restless energy that only came from men who had nothing left to lose. The air was stagnant, carrying the scent of sweat, mildew, and something metallic that never quite faded. The lights overhead flickered, casting a dull, lifeless glow that made everything look washed out. It was the kind of place where time stretched out unnaturally, where hours bled into each other, until even the concept of morning and night started to lose meaning. Diddy had been placed in the general population, not in protective custody, not in some isolated luxury unit reserved for the ultra-wealthy. No, MDC didn't do special treatment, not in a case like his. He wasn't just a celebrity locked up for tax evasion or insider trading. He was facing the kind of charges that came with real enemies, and in here that meant he was fair game. Nobody outright attacked him, at least not yet, but there was something almost more dangerous than an immediate confrontation: the waiting, the unspoken knowledge that everyone was watching, waiting to see how he would react to this new world. There were eyes on him when he moved through the corridors, sizing him up, calculating whether he was a threat, a target, or just another lost cause. Some faces were blank, others filled with amusement, and a few carried something more dangerous: resentment. He wasn't the first high-profile name to pass through these halls, and he sure as hell wouldn't be the last. Jeffrey Epstein had spent time here before his death, and the stories surrounding that still lingered in the air like a bad rumor that no one quite wanted to say out loud. R. Kelly had been locked up here, too, another fallen giant whose presence had sparked whispers and side eyes. Even Tekashi 699 had spent time within these same walls before his cooperation with the feds had been relocated somewhere safer. If Diddy had been expecting some kind of respect from the inmates just because of who he was sorely mistaken. The world of rap and hip-hop might have built him up as untouchable, a kingpin in his own right. The prison had its own hierarchy, and in that hierarchy his past didn't mean. The food situation alone was enough to remind him of just how far he had fallen. Gone were the meticulously curated meals prepared by private chefs, the imported steaks, the handcrafted cocktails. Now meals arrived on flimsy plastic trays, steaming with the scent of something barely edible. The portions were small, the quality even worse: meat that was questionably sourced, bread that claimed to be mashed potatoes but had the texture of glue. Diddy barely touched his first meal. The sight of it alone made his stomach twist. He had gone hungry before, sure, long before he was famous, back when he was just another kid in Harlem trying to make it, but that was a different kind of hunger, one fueled by ambition, by a dream. This was humiliation on a plate. He could hear the comments from the other inmates as he stared down at his tray, the barely hidden laughter, the quiet jabs about whether or not he was too good to eat like the rest of them. But hunger is a dangerous thing. It has a way of breaking even the most stubborn of men. By the third day, the knowing emptiness in his gut overpowered his pride. Life in prison, maybe they could negotiate something, but it would mean admitting everything, and Diddy wasn't sure if his ego would let him do that. His legacy, the one thing he had spent his life protecting, was already being rewritten in real time. He wasn't a mogul anymore, he was a criminal, a disgrace, a cautionary tale, and the industry, it wasn't mourning his downfall, it was feeding off of it. The same people who had once praised him, called him a visionary, shook his hand at every industry event. They were the same ones now acting like they had never known him. Artists who had built their career under his guidance were suddenly making statements condemning him, distancing themselves. There were no loyalty oaths in the entertainment industry. There was only self-preservation. He had done the same thing to others. He had watched people get canceled, watched their careers crumble, and never once stepped in to help. And now it was his turn. He had spent his life controlling narratives. But this wasn't his narrative anymore. This was history writing itself without his permission. He thought about what would happen if he really did get sentenced to life. Would people forget him at first? No, the trial would be a spectacle, the sentencing a headline. But after that, after the dust settled, he had seen it happen before. A year and people stopped talking. 2 years and they still wondering what happened to you. 5 years in, you become nothing more than a name from the past. The thought sent a deep aching chill through his chest, because for a man like Diddy, obscurity was worse than death. And that was the future waiting for him. The media would move on, the industry would move on, And he would be stuck here trapped in the shadow of what he used to be. He wondered how long it would take before he stopped being Diddy, altogether, before he was just another forgotten inmate counting days in a place where time didn't matter. And for the first time since he got locked up, he felt it, the cold, undeniable truth. This wasn't a nightmare. He was going to wake up from. This was his new reality, and there was no way out. And thanks for watching this video, guys. Bye.